sorry. Did I break your concentration?
Somewhere between science and superstition.
We have such sights to show you.
Strange Eons. Except I can't hear you clap.
That's going to be a lot of waveforms.
Welcome to Strange Eons Radio. Laughing over there is Eric Morgan.
Hello.
Chuckling lightly over there is Vanessa Williams. What's wrong with you?
I just laugh quietly, that's all.
All right. I'm Kelly Young. Hey, you guys. I'm almost done with Hannibal.
Oh my gosh, already?
Yes.
Whoa!
I just kept watching.
How many seasons are there?
Only 3. I'm on season 3, episode 8.
Oh my god.
And they're short seasons. They're not like normal
Yeah, they're
network
13
TV shows.
episodes each.
Oh my gosh, you're going to kill it. You're going to kill it like tonight.
I don't know if
Probably
I can do that.
Just sit there.
Yeah, but that's not what I really wanted to talk about. I want to talk about Dark season 3. Just showed up on Netflix this weekend. Or
That's
last
a
week.
People
German
are
show?
freaking out
Yes.
about
Yeah.
it.
Vanessa, did you watch this?
I watched the first episode and I realized I'd have to read it, and I didn't want to watch it with the dubbing, so I kept putting it off, and I have not seen it. So
Okay, well, Eric's going to kill me, but I'm listening to the dubbing. I'm not
Are you
reading
really?
it this time. Yeah.
wow.
Is it well dubbed? I mean, it can be done well.
Yeah, it's not too shabby, but quite honestly, the subtitles are too small for me to read. I'm 71 now, and
Time for a bigger
I can't. Yeah, I can't read it from the distance from my couch. And I was like, "Fuck this!" And
Yeah.
partly also, I just need a new prescription on my glasses.
Can you read this line? Fuck you, Doc.
Anyway, if you haven't watched this show, it is a time travel show that is kind of masquerading as a murder mystery. And if you only watch the first episode, you don't even realize that's what it's about. You think it's a murder show. And then at the end of the second episode, it becomes a time travel show.
It's funny because like I knew that, but only because so many people were so excited about it.
Yeah, I loved it. I like it more than Stranger Things. I think
Wow.
it's just spectacular, and I was really pleased to see season 3 drop. So now I got to burn through Hannibal so I can get to Dark. I did watch the first episode of season 3, and it was good.
All right, there you go.
Well, I checked out, and I think you guys might have talked about this already. Vast is the Night.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm always 2 steps behind. If you were a killer, I would never get you.
Vast of Night, I believe.
Yes. Yes. Oh, thank you. Vast of Night. And yeah, like it was really interesting because it starts off so much like a Gilmore Girls episode.
Oh, really?
Yeah, very much so, where they're just moving the camera through a space and then people are talking very quickly and there's some kind of activity going on. All of that is 100% very, very Gilmore Girls, like right out of the book.
Wow.
But super fun. And yeah, I don't really have anything bad to say about it.
I thought it was a really neat movie. And I
Yeah.
thought it was definitely a filmmaker's movie. As you're watching some of those shots.
Yeah,
you're
oh my
like,
gosh.
Whoa.
I'm not really sure how they did the
Yeah.
one that is, what is it, a drone? I don't know even what it is. It's so low to the ground.
It's low to the ground, but also at one point it goes through a building and out the window.
Yeah.
And then goes low to the ground. I was like, is this all digital or what? How are they doing
Probably
that?
some kind of
crazy.
drone combo digital thing.
You know, you see all these cool things, though. I could see if it was low enough budget, the cameraman in the building just hands it off to a cameraman outside the window,
Of
and
course.
it
Yeah, that would work
continues.
too.
So
Yeah, I've seen that Eurovision episode.
Well, that was also the Dead movie, the Cut of the Dead.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Did some stuff
One
like
Cut of the
that.
Dead. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, cool.
Well, I was a little amiss last week. Sorry to Gwen and Brian. I didn't mention the amazing online version they pulled off for the Portland Horror Film Festival.
Right.
Oh, that's right.
If you have to go to streaming, which they did this year, I think I've seen a few film festivals that have been streamed. I think they've done probably one of the best versions. Steve and Gord doing the Bone Bow was kind of fun, just because they were in it so much. But theirs was a start, go, done. What Portland had, they went through the Hollywood Theater and they did tickets, and they set up to where once a movie started or a shorts block started, you had 24 hours to watch it.
Oh, nice.
Oh, wow.
You could pause it, you could fast forward, you could rewind. And I really liked that because they showed a lot of stuff. They had a full festival, like 4 or 5 blocks of shorts a night or a feature or two. So I'm like, it's a long time to sit. That's the drawback of a streaming festival. It's a long time to sit in front of your computer.
Right.
I'm more willing to sit on my ass in a film festival theater for 4 or 5 hours for 2 or 3 blocks of film.
There's got to be a way you could cast this to your television or something, all right? Make it a little more comfortable.
Well, I watched it upstairs because Dina's like, go ahead, go watch it. I'll watch what I want
I'll see you in 14 hours.
That's right, exactly. But they had a couple standout films, Making Monsters and Uncle Peckerhead.
Oh my goodness.
Making Monsters is a neat kind of atmospheric, sort of found footage, but not really, film that's pretty well done. And Uncle Peckerhead is about a band that is traveling, and the guy that's their main roadie is like a serial killer or something.
Oh.
And it's actually quite good and a lot of fun. And they had a hell of a lot of good shorts. So well done, Portland, man. They really pulled off an interesting version of what you have to do right now in the world.
Well, cool. I know Gwen listens to the show.
Oh.
And every once in a while she will comment on something, and she's got a podcast coming up soon too. So we'll be checking that out.
Nice.
You know, one of the things I was wondering with all of the cancel culture going on and all of this stuff going on, how long before the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival has to change its name?
What?
Well, they seem to have weathered a few big waves and storms of Lovecraft problems.
Is
Yeah,
it
but that
because
came-
of him?
Yeah, because
Okay.
Lovecraft
Yeah,
is
he's
a problematic human being.
Yeah, he's not a great
Racist.
guy. Yeah,
Yes.
But they've weathered that from the Lovecraft community.
true.
And now the world is in on this. So
Oh, I see what you mean. Like if they do a full streaming version of it this year, what
I'm
might
just curious. I know the Lovecraft Bar is no longer the Lovecraft Bar.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I find that very interesting, though, because there are just so many Lovecraft video games that have been coming out. And I know they don't
Yeah.
call themselves like H.P. Lovecraft
Right.
wandering through a sunken city.
well, that's what I think is,
But-
you know, it's a little silly, but I think that's what the problem is his name.
Giving him like a shout.
Right.
Which also, if Lovecraft Country does extremely well, could be interesting to see what comes out of that as reactions.
Right.
What's Lovecraft Country?
HBO's new series by
Peele's involved.
Yeah.
Jordan.
Jordan Peele,
sure.
based on the book by Matt Ruff, who lives here in Washington.
Okay.
It's basically it takes place during the 50s in America and it focuses on the Jim Crow laws.
Yeah.
And then there are some Lovecraftian elements that keep,
Yeah.
you know, dropping in. It's almost set up like an anthology, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, the book's very anthology-like, where there's with a very strong through line.
Sure.
But some of the stories are better than others, but the ones that are good are really, really good. It's a good book overall.
And that last trailer that popped up
Yeah.
looked fucking great.
Yeah, it did.
So,
It'll be interesting to see how it does.
right. But because that basically is focused on the racism, I think that they can slide.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly. If they're addressing it head on, and if Peele's like a big part of it, then
right. Guess what I watched that I had never seen before, you guys?
My Little Pony.
No, I've seen many, many of those.
Pony Room. It's in back. Kevin's never seen it.
Right. I am what you call a brony.
No.
Bronies before honies, you know what I mean?
Does that mean you dress up? Are you a clopper?
Wait a second. Oh, wait, what?
You've gone down rough territory, sir.
I thought that was a furry.
It's a whole nother thing.
All right, we're getting off topic.
Obviously, we really aren't, because we have no freaking idea what you're talking about. So go
Wait a
ahead.
second, wait a second. This
I
is
dare
ringing
you.
bells, oh, cloppers and huffers.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there's
Oh.
there probably.
Somebody who actually
Heifer?
knows is going to be not a huffer, Kelly. It's a Swiffer or something like that. Something like
So
that.
Swiffer Wedged.
Anyway, I watched a movie, Vanessa, that you've never even heard of, and Eric, that you probably have heard of and never
Very
saw.
judgmental.
It's called
Shocker.
The Wildlife.
You're right, I have.
1984. It was written by Cameron Crowe.
Okay.
It was kind of a sequel to Fast Times at Ridgemont High, at least a spiritual sequel.
Weird.
It's got Chris Penn instead of Sean Penn.
Sure, 1-to-1 swap.
And it's got, I wish I had written it down because now all the names are leaving me. Leah Thompson and who was the original Marty McFly before?
Eric
Chris-
Stoltz.
Eric Stoltz, thank you. And it's the same setup as...
Yeah, I remember that film.
Yeah, okay. It's the same setup as Fast Times at Ridgemont High. It follows a couple of graduates, high school graduates now, who are kind of going and making their way into the world. And it wasn't great, but it was kind of fun. But the most interesting part for me was that the credit pops up, original score by Edward Van Halen. I was like, oh, this is
Whoa.
interesting. 1980. Oh, I think this is 1985. So I was like, okay, interesting. And the music pops on, and it's clearly Eddie Van Halen. It's got some pretty groovy licks in there, an obvious drum machine, so it's just Eddie. But I was listening to this stuff, and some of the songs are early versions of later Van Halen songs with Sammy.
Really?
Yeah, there was definitely a version of Right Now that played in one scene, and I was like, wow, holy cow, he was recycling some of his guitar licks.
Oh my god.
It was pretty crazy. It was the high point of the movie, was listening to the soundtrack.
Nobody really saw this movie, so I'm just going to use this song here.
I think that was probably his thought process, because nobody did. The movie was a huge flop, and it's impossible to find. I found it through nefarious means.
Well, you're absolutely right. I definitely didn't come across it, but I don't think it's the kind of film I would. Unless it's like a bunch of teens murdering each other, I probably have been interested.
No, this
Depends
is
on
not.
how you use murdering. I guess you could, euphemistically use the term.
Oh, this is not a Vanessa movie.
Murdered it, bro.
And in fact, Chris Penn's character is. We've been talking problematic. Well, he is problematic.
I
Sure.
imagine so.
It does have probably the first appearance of Jenny Wright
Oh,
from Near Dark. So
okay.
I thought that was interesting. She's one of the main characters.
Yeah.
Very pretty. Probably the best actor, to be honest. Well, her and Eric Stoltz were pretty solid. Leah Thompson was given a kind of lackluster role, and so, but I'm a huge fan of her. So.
Yeah, she's great. Anything else?
Sure. Well, it's been kind of a weird week, and all the movies I've seen are just like films I got on Netflix for my mom.
Sure.
So
For
there's
my
some-
mom.
No, really, there's some bad movies. All I will say is, please God, don't watch Playing with Fire, no matter how much you think like it might be okay.
Is that a new movie?
It's pretty new. It's like a comedy, like a family comedy with who's the hot cool wrestler who's doing acting now?
John Cena?
Yeah, with John Cena as the star.
Weird, 'cause I've seen him a couple of things and he's really entertaining.
He's very entertaining,
not
but
so
the
good in
film
this.
is horrible. It's just horrible. It's very slapstick. It feels like a 90s like family film. It feels like Beethoven.
Oh.
And
Ouch.
this era does not look kindly towards that. So
Well, not only that, but after watching The Rock in Tooth Fairy and Hulk Hogan in Suburban Commando, wouldn't every wrestler go, I can't do this movie?
you would think, and his role is so antithetical to who he is normally. Like the guy's like a super stuck up, like just very like type A character that it just doesn't feel, it feels like jarring the whole time. You can see the lines where he's acting, and it's just very poorly cut, frankly. But yeah, so on the flip side of that, I saw a Lego movie, with my mom.
The
She
first
hadn't
one?
seen it. Yeah.
That's a great
It
film.
is so good.
Yeah,
it is such a good movie. Like as far as family films go, it's almost perfect. It's just
great.
super fun to watch. It has a great message underneath.
Should get
Such good
the
animation.
Batman Lego movie.
Oh, we're Lego Movie 2 is the next one, and then I'll
Okay.
get her on the Batman Lego. But Lego Movie 2 just arrived,
Nice.
Law of diminishing returns on these Lego movies, but
Yeah.
that first one was pretty damn
so
solid.
pretty fantastic.
The Batman one's fun. I like what's his name as the guy who did the voice of
Yeah,
Batman.
Will Arnett.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. I almost said Arquette.
The problem with it is the jokes come so quickly that it's almost impossible to hear them all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and everything's so everything generally is just so fast between the visuals and the audio. It can be pretty tough.
was your mom singing "Everything Is Awesome" afterwards?
She was not, but she did immediately call my brother and ask him if my nephew had seen it because she was going to show it to him like that next day otherwise.
Nice.
Wow, she's
Yeah.
like, I want to watch this again.
Yes.
And I need an excuse.
Hell, I saw it in the theater, man.
I know. I remember you sending me a text saying this movie had no right being as fun as it is.
I had the same experience. Yeah, I saw it in theater and was like, oh my God, that was good.
Speaking of good,
Yes.
but not new, I don't know, whenever the mood strikes us, watching of the Buffy musical occurred a couple nights ago.
Oh,
God damn, that is so good.
I have not seen that in so long.
It's insanely well written. As far as an episode that happens in the middle of a season, it's got to be one of the great turn the season episodes
yeah, it's got a
where the season
reveal at the end.
yeah, where the season was sort of rough but not real dark, and by the end of that you're going, oh boy, and the show just got dark after that episode.
Every TV series wants to do their musical episode. This is the only one where it made sense that everybody
Yes.
was singing, and they reference why everybody is suddenly singing, and
Yeah.
they realize they're stuck in a musical. Yeah, it's pretty brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like since I've seen it on things like Sabrina and Archie or whatever that show is, Riverdale, it's not as well.
No,
It doesn't make nearly as much sense. And that Buffy musical episode set a high bar, considering like half the cast can't sing very well. It's still so
yeah.
good despite it.
Yeah, they worked hard to write to their singing ability,
Yeah.
and suddenly it's like, so I mean, she's a main character, but not a main character. Suddenly Tara's got 2 or 3 songs.
Right,
Yeah.
because she can sing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sarah Michelle Gellar's voice is a little...
Yeah,
It's a little
she's-
pitchy.
Unfortunately, she's
Little pitchy
probably
dog.
the weakest
I
singer. but-
seem to remember, Willow not having a particularly good voice. But of course, Giles, who is in a band.
Right.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
And Spike's an okay singer, but he does it so well, the way he sings
I
the song.
know.
It's just like, oh,
And
this
he's
is
also in a
awesome.
band, that guy, James Marsters. And
He sings better now. I saw him live when he was at Emerald City
Oh,
a few
really?
years ago, and he's actually very good live. That was a really good
I was
show.
going to say, because I was surprised watching it. Like, wow, why aren't you better considering this is what you do? That's fantastic. That makes me really want to go back and watch all of Buffy.
That's
Something
generally
I could
what
do.
Dana says afterwards. Is it time to watch it again? It's like, because I'm so much. There's so much new shit. Let's
Right.
go and watch
I
new stuff.
know.
But it is well worth. I don't know how many
Dude.
times we've gone through it. But
I know.
It's well worth it.
I think I probably watched it at least 15 times all the way through as well. Like that was my high school and college years,
Nice.
over and over and over again. But those first couple seasons are just such an uphill battle.
Yes.
Yeah, the first season's a little rough.
Yeah. Even though you're in the episode and you're like, oh yeah, this one's good. And it's just like, oh, actually, I know who the monster is. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was very Monster of the Week until they
Yes.
kind of figured out that they
Let's
didn't need to
not
do
Make
that
through
anymore.
line. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Anything else?
No, I think that's
Another real quick one I'm going
Oh,
to throw
sure,
out.
please.
Yeah, figured out HBO Max has all of Doctor Who. Well, all of the newer seasons of
And
Doctor Who.
all 8 Harry Potters because it keeps advertising
Yeah,
to me.
they do that a lot.
I
well,
got a text on my phone today that said, do you want to watch Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows? And it was just some kind of notification that popped up.
weird.
No.
Not right now, thanks. I'm good. But cheers.
When the Capaldi took over,
Sure.
something happened with the recording, or maybe that's when we cut the cord, and I missed everything since
I
then.
haven't seen any of his either.
And oh man, it's still so freaking good. It's such an incredibly well written show. It is so much
I've only seen
fun.
that actor in The Loop, so which is quite a different part.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, I can't imagine him not just swearing and being angry the whole time.
Well, he's a fairly angry doctor, but not really angry, but definitely not swearing.
Well, all right, guys, should we take a little break? And then when we come back, we can talk about cursed objects.
You've got the HD TV, but you're not watching movies in HD unless you're watching on Blu-ray high def.
A lot has changed.
You're right.
Are we alone?
No. John Dillinger.
I hear anything I want anytime.
You woke up the baby.
Blu-ray high def gives you freaking awesome picture. Sound that will blow the roof off your living room.
Go find a way to Earth.
It's like discovering your favorite films all over again for the first time.
I will bring this fight to your doorstep.
Connect to the internet for more content, more interactivity, and more special features than ever before.
It's going to change your life in ways you can't possibly imagine.
Sound good? Yes, sir! The future is blue. The best way to watch movies at home ever.
And we are back. Or are we? Hard to tell.
I don't know.
Okay.
I feel it in my bones. I feel like my bones are here, and I am in fact back.
All right. Well, then, since this is your choice for subgenres, why don't
Yes.
you go first?
Absolutely. So this week we're doing cursed objects. As I mentioned last week, I was kind of trying to find an excuse to pick the pick that I picked, which is The Fog.
John Carpenter's The Fog.
This is KB Antonio Bay. Stevie Wayne here, and let me be the first to wish Antonio Bay a happy birthday. We're 100 years old today, and keep a watch out for that fog bank heading in from the east.
100 years ago, between midnight and 1, something unknown came out of the fog. Now it has returned. Oh, Jesus. 100 years ago, between midnight and 1, something unnatural came out of the fog. Now it has returned. Years ago, between midnight and 1, something evil came out of the fog. Now it has returned.
Who's there?
The fog.
Antonio Bay has a curse on it. We're all cursed. Some water got in here, but something awful cold did.
I think I'll go to Vancouver now. Where's the fog now?
Well, it should be right outside my door now.
Oh, there's something different about this fog. Dan, stay away from the door! Someone listen to me!
Get inside and lock your doors. Close your windows. There's something in the fog. Stay away from the fog. Williams, John Houseman, Janet Leigh as Kathy Williams, and Hal Holbrook as Father Malone. The Fog. What you can't see won't hurt you. It will kill you. Between midnight and 1, it will find you.
Of course.
Sure.
And last week's topic, of which this is a Scream Factory
I know.
release, was not a good enough reason for you to do it then.
I really considered it, but almost every John Carpenter movie is under Scream Factory, and it's like choosing one of your children. It's just too hard. I felt
You
like
chose none of your children,
Yeah.
and they all died by Nazi hand.
It's
I hope
okay.
you-
I'll get there eventually. I'll save them each from an attic one by one. But we're going to start off with The Fog. And the reason for that, honestly, like, I don't know what it is about The Fog, but it's been one of my favorite John Carpenter films. And I think it's honestly because it's the one that probably really introduced me to him. So I think it gave me the Carpenter fever. It was like, oh, hey, there's like a really good director out there that you might really enjoy because you enjoyed this film for some reason. So this film came out February 1980. It got, as far as Rotten Tomatoes, 74% critics, 64% audience. I just realized that I completely forgot to look up the budget, so I have no idea if it was a financial success or not. Let's just say it didn't probably do that well, I'm assuming.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah. And the thing that's cursed in this, and I do think it's important that we each explain what is cursed at some point. This has both the town and gold cursed within it. And
Nice.
Possibly people. So it's got a big old curse. There's a whole curse situation going down.
let me just interrupt you.
Yeah.
Budget of $1.1 million.
Okay.
Box office of $21.3 million.
Oh my gosh. It did super well. Okay. Well,
Nice.
way to go, The Fog. Wow. I knew it was super low budget. And we can talk about some of that stuff later. Yeah, they did a great job with this movie. It's directed by John Carpenter. If you don't know what he's done, then I don't even want to look at you.
Oh. You can look at me because of you, I have a shirt that says directed by John Carpenter. on it.
There you go. Yes.
I should have worn I was going to wear my Deborah Hill shirt and I totally forgot to because it's produced by Deborah Hill, who is
course
this
it is.
longtime collaborator, super awesome, and actually co-wrote this film with him. So he wrote the male parts and she wrote the female parts
Oh, interesting.
from what I remember
That's cool.
from their talking about it over the commentary of the film. So you have a really great cast in here. Adrienne Barbeau, who's extremely prolific. If you guys haven't seen Maude, let me tell you, she is something else. She's also in Escape from New York and the TV film Someone Is Watching Me, which is where she and John Carpenter started their collaboration. She's also in Swamp Thing, and she is the voice of the computer in The Thing, uncredited. Also, she's the voice of Catwoman in Batman the Animated Series and pretty much every Batman project since then.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Right? She also does a bunch of voicing for other video games like God of War, Halo, more film.
Had a good voice.
Yeah, she has such an incredible voice. And she's going to be in an upcoming project called Bring Me the Head of Lance Henriksen.
Oh,
Very fitting.
she was also Billy in Creepshow.
That's correct.
Just call me Billy.
We also have a drifter in this movie played by none other than Jamie Lee Curtis. You might remember her from Halloween. I don't think I should say anything else about that. And also her mother is in this, Janet Leigh, who you might know from Psycho. She's playing the mayor. You also have Nick Castle, the fisherman. Also in this film, we have Nick Castle, fisherman, everyman, played by Tom Thrill Me Atkins.
Wait a second. So his name in this is Nick Castle.
Uh-huh.
Oh, really?
And
Yep.
Nick Castle is the actor who played the Shape.
Yep.
So
John Carpenter loves doing this kind of stuff.
he named
Yeah.
his character after the actor
Actor.
who played Michael Myers.
A bunch of the characters are actually named after different people in the production. He has all kinds of Easter eggs all throughout this film. Enough that like I just stopped writing them down because I was like, oh, this is too much. But should you be so inclined to look up the trivia section of IMDb, you will find many more.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, the like street names, people names, all kinds of cool stuff. So he's great, totally awesome. And we also have a really interesting character with Dan O'Bannon, played by Charles Cyphers.
This is going to be very confusing. So,
sorry, did I say
the character's
that
name is Dan O'Bannon?
Yes.
Shit.
I know. I know. Anyway, who is probably one of the people that I've heard in some of the most of John Carpenter's films, because he's in Halloween as Brackett, Assault on Precinct 13 as Starker, Someone is Watching Me, Elvis, The Fog, Escape from New York, Halloween 2, the upcoming Halloween Kills, and Coach Carl on Buffy, the Vampire Slayers episode Go Fish. So I thought that was pretty neat.
He must have had some real big dirt on Carpenter.
Oh, man, yeah.
It just kept showing up. I mean, Carpenter's got his favorites for sure. And then we have Father Malone, played by Hal Holbrook, who you might remember as Deep Throat from All the President's Men. So this film, the plot. We begin an old man reading around a campfire to some kids and quoting, I think he does like an Edgar Allan Poe poem briefly, but he kind of gives this legend about this ship that went down, and this story of these people who drowned, but they come back at midnight and they haunt and something. It's really hard to follow, frankly, because it's a long monologue and it's just very dark, and it just slowly zooms in and you kind of sleepy to his voice. So it's taken me like 4 or 5 times to figure out what he's saying through watching this. I frankly half the time forget it's there, but it's there. And then we begin with this really cool scene of this fog rolling into the town and things kind of freaking out. So we see car alarms, is it car alarms? Alarms and things going off, bottles breaking. You get a gas station, the pump falls off of its pump holder and starts spraying gas everywhere, just going crazy, like mechanical things moving up and down, dogs barking, like, and you know, there's
dogs and cats sleeping together, mass hysteria.
It's so true. And you know, there's a couple of people I think who get some knocks on their door, but by the time they show up, midnight has come and gone, the witching hour is past, and there's nothing there. But something is obviously in this fog. We have a woman that same night arriving in town. She's a drifter, and she gets picked up by Tom Atkins. This is Jamie Lee Curtis. Their character names are too confusing, so I'm just going to call them their acting names. And she says, oh, you know, I'm kind of bad luck. And in that moment, the car windows like explode, and there's just like glass everywhere. So something strange is going on. Adrian Barboa, we're introduced, is a radio DJ.
Boa?
How do you say it? Barbo? Barbo.
Boom Boom Barbo.
Boom Boom Barbo. Barbo. Okay.
Does this also have Donald Pleasance in it? Or
no.
Pleasance and Barboa.
There you go.
Would be a good team.
Adrian Barbeau is a radio DJ for a jazz station in the Lighthouse. She's a single mom. She's kind of put everything into this jazz station, and it's kind of her whole life, and she's the only station in town, it seems. No one listens to anything else other than this, and she gets this really cool bird's eye view down of kind of the town and of the shore, and she can see all the ships that are coming and going. She has this weatherman who has a total thing for her. It's really, I find it super fun. He keeps calling her during the kind of commercial breaks or while the songs are going to give her like the news so she can update the town on the weather. And he's always like, so you going to do that party tonight? And she's like, oh no, I gotta go back. The song's almost over. Bye. But they've got this really nice little like rapport going back and forth, a little flirty relationship. And he tells her that a fog is coming in, and she's watching, and she's like, yeah, it's kind of going against wind. And there is this little ship, vessel, a little small fishing vessel, sitting out there, and a bunch of guys drinking late at night, and they're looking out the little porthole window, listening to Stevie Nicks on the radio, and they're like, she's crazy. There's no fog. There's no fog anywhere. No fog. Oh man, that chick's hot. Yeah, I saw her in the bar that one time. Man, no fog. Oh my God, there's fog. And lo and behold, this fog comes in, and with it, this enormous, it looks like what you would think of as a classical, like, pirate ship. This giant ship comes, and these men who are obviously otherly or dead or ghosts or something are behind it. They have these glowing green eyes, and they board the fishing vessel, and they just, with the fog, come in and kill everybody. You can't really get a good eye on what these people look like. You just know that in the fog, they're there, and they will murder you. Super cool. Meanwhile, the town is getting ready for its 100th anniversary celebration of its founding. Janet Leigh and her sassy assistant are getting the festival ready. You kind of get the sense that something might happen the night of this 100th anniversary thing. Maybe bad things might come.
Is it sort of like a Valentine's Day anniversary celebration too?
It's very similar.
Interesting.
There's kind of like a vengeance thing going down. Nice. And we kind of start to get hints as to what's happening. The priest, Father Malone, who's always in his cups, assistant, will note, definitely not played by the uncredited John Carpenter. Right. Yep. Who, by the way, is not a great actor. Nope. He really needs to, if you watch Body Parts, I'm sorry. Body Bags. Sorry. Body Bags. Thank you. He's really not fun to watch, but he finds, like, they're at midnight during all the craziness that's happening. Part of his wall like falls off, and in it he finds this book, and it's this diary that was kept by, I believe, his grandfather, who is also a priest, and who had basically screwed these people over and stolen things from them. And he was kind of making this confession of sorts. So there's this idea that there's something vengeful coming through. The boat goes missing. The Drifter and Drifter, Jamie Lee Curtis and Tom Atkins decide to go check out the boat, see what's what. All the dudes are super dead, but look like they've been under the sea for like a long arse time. Bring the bodies back, and in the morgue, they're kind of waiting. The mortician is talking to Tom Atkins about like how long they've been dead, and hey man, I just talked to them the other night. And meanwhile, the body gets up, one of the bodies, and walks towards Jamie Lee Curtis, and she turns, screams. We don't know what happens. We're off camera. Come back, and he's laying there on the floor, and he's written down 6 will die. So now we're getting a few more clues. Also, Stevie Nicks, Adrian's son, has been playing around on the beach and has seen a shiny gold coin in the water, and it turns into a piece of wood that says the Elizabeth Dane, picks it up, takes it home. Oops. Definitely not cursed. Definitely do not put it on your like Betamax player in case it should leak with cursing, with curses of its cursedness. The anniversary comes around. The fog, of course, rolls into town, and in it is creatures who are attacking. It's a cool film, but I'm just gonna go through some of the likes and dislikes, because I think that's really gonna sum up what's going on here. The things I love about it are like the mise en scène, the texture, the detail. There's just a lot of little things happening. I've talked before about it, but I just love this scene where the first time we see the fog come through and the midnight, the witching hour happen, there's a guy cleaning up alone in a store, and he stops and he grabs like a milk bottle, he uncaps it, he drinks from it, he recaps it, and he puts it back in like the sale section. So it's just little things like that, and the way like the local stores decorated with all the silly ship stuff, and it just feels very fleshed out. On top of that, you just have these amazing characters who you just know who they are immediately. You've got, for example, Jamie Lee Curtis, who's picked up by Tom Atkins. They immediately just go home and sleep together, but it's no big deal. Like
Tom Atkins, man.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you? Because it's Tom Atkins. He's the one who got you in the car, and it's Jamie Lee Curtis. So who cares where she came from?
She looks like she's 16, and he looks like he's 48. That's a little weird.
It is a little weird, but I do like that they just don't make it a thing.
Halloween 3.
That's true.
Oh God.
That's true.
Oh God.
That's just what he does.
It's true. It's the Atkins way. When he's not trying to kill himself.
It's the Atkins diet.
Oh God. Anyway.
Moving on. I like the premise a lot. The fog lighthouse setup is really neat. Like, you just never see that. Like, there's a radio station for some reason in a lighthouse, and this person has a bird's eye view of what's going on, and then that's going to come into play later. Like, it's just a really cool idea. The monsters are freaking amazing. The not pirates. Definitely not pirates. They're totally just lepers. Don't worry about it. They're perfectly done because they probably look like crap. Honestly, they probably look terrible, but you don't know because of the way they're lit and because of the way the fog rolls in around them whenever they come out. It is just so beautifully lit, so beautifully thought through. And there's just, obviously the music is great because it's John Carpenter and he does all his own stuff. But there are a few details that I think is also lends a lot to this film. For example, like Jamie Lee Curtis is wearing a wedding ring when she gets picked up. They don't mention it, but it tells us something about her character. Adrienne Barbeau, Stevie Nicks' car is just full of crap when she's driving on her way to the lighthouse. Like, she's obviously some kind of hoarder who just collects stuff and can't help herself. There's just the commercials that they play in between the music and the kind of, you're listening to KAB radio. And it just goes on all these different versions of the same thing over and over again. And it's just those things that really make this film punchy. The things I don't like, it's basically one thing, the story. I wish it made sense. It does not. For example, 6 must die. And it's a revenge thing, so it's like the 6 people that screwed these ghosts over originally. But they're just murdering at random. There's no way those fishermen happen to be like 3 of the whatever, like ancestry, and they're somehow connected. No, they're just killing. Like, the nanny goes to answer the door, and like the ghost is gonna get him. It's like, she's not related to anybody. No, none of these people, it doesn't matter. Okay. Why the fishermen came back from the dead makes no sense whatsoever. None of the rest of the dead people rise. There's a super weird beginning that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Why is Father Malone a drunk? They never really get into that. The characters are very siloed. It almost feels very disconnected. And because of that, because you're following all these characters, when the big fog rolls into the town, it doesn't feel like a town event. It feels like only 6 people have to deal with this. And that's very frustrating because to make it feel larger, you want to see people like fleeing, or you just want to see more activity. You want to see a movie theater clear out. You want to see the giant event that they're hosting just have people run into the bushes. And that just doesn't happen. Also, Carpenter's cameo is weird. And the kid in it is annoying as hell. So those are the things that I don't particularly enjoy about this film. But that being said, it introduced me to Carpenter, so I just have a big piece of my heart that loves this film. A couple of small pieces of trivia. Jamie Lee Curtis actually got this role. She had requested from John Carpenter that he give her a role other than a virgin. Because she didn't want to get typecast. So he kind of wrote this sexualized version of her in for the film. So that's why it feels a little weird. Also, the film originally only ended up being
let me see here. I believe it was only 60 or 70 minutes long. So it was I'm sorry. It was too short. It was 80 minutes. I apologize. So John Carpenter was told to go out and shoot more. And that's actually where you get the corpse rising in the morgue scene comes from that. Huh. There's a detailed death scenes that come in to play. Barbeau on top of the lighthouse fighting off one of the lepers is from that, which I actually really like that scene. But that opening shot with the fisherman the dude giving the story, the campfire story, that was also added in. So some of the stuff that doesn't make sense to the story was actually thrown in there. And I think that might be contributing to it. It had a super low budget, as was pointed out, but they shot on Panavision to give it a larger, grander feel. And also the distributor spent 3 times the budget just promoting the film. And while they were promoting it, they installed fog machines in lobbies of theaters where it was being screened.
Nice.
I think that's cool as hell.
That's very cool. Yeah, very William Castle there.
Exactly. Like they really went for it. And I feel like it's important to kind of talk a little bit about the drama of this. And I think it's really fun. So you should listen to the commentary with Deborah Hill and John Carpenter for this film. And the reason being, he dated Deborah Hill from 1976 till 1979. He met Adrienne Barbeau in 1978 on Someone's Watching Me. He married her in 1979. This film is super awkward. It is so unbelievably awkward. Like, I don't even know if they're in the same room when they're recording this, but like, there's moments where she's like, yeah, I remember that. That's my lamp. And he's like, oh, yeah. Huh. She's like, yeah, interesting. Oh, man. There's just a lot of very like strange, like, oh, how did we go about doing this? Oh yeah, no, we did blank. Oh yeah, I remember that. Quiet. Ouch. It's great. But Deborah Hill, like, they did end up continuing to collaborate together, and they actually went on to produce the remake of The Fog together down the line. So I have a ton more fun facts, but it's just because I'm obsessed and I gotta stop. Oh, John Carpenter loves Sonic the Hedgehog. There.
I have 2 real huge problems. I won't say that I hate this movie. Sure. That's too strong a word.
Yeah.
But and it's not my least favorite of his movies. Those spots are
reserved,
saved for The Ward and Ghosts of Mars.
Yes. There you go.
But The Fog then falls right there.
Wow. Even below Escape from LA?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think, this movie is all style and no substance. The shots are beautiful. The shots of the leopard ghosts are great. They're basically just silhouettes with glowing eyes. Yeah, it's impossible for me to believe that the station that everyone is listening to and getting all their news from is a jazz station.
Yes. And again, I think these limitations come from the production because that was all they could afford. That's why it's jazz.
You kept saying they were listening to Stevie Nicks, and I'm like, oh, what station? Oh, wait, that's her name.
Katie?
Because he couldn't name her something normal. He had to name her after a rock star and make this conversation we're having very confusing.
More confusing. Yes, yeah. It's true.
Here's my biggest problem.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the protagonist of this film?
Well,
who's the protagonist?
It probably has to be the priest. Because the protagonist is always the person who changes, right? And no one else changes in this film other than the priest.
Right. Okay. But he's not the lead.
No.
And that becomes problematic.
Yeah.
And not in a racist way. In a storytelling way, you're like, wait a second, is this the main character?
Yep.
Because he's not the main actor. And then you kind of want to give it to Adrienne.
Yes.
Except that
she doesn't do anything.
When the chips are laid out and her son is in danger, she makes the decision to stay in the radio station because the town folk need to know what's coming. I'm like, you are a very bad mother.
Did I mention how annoying her child was?
Yeah, well, look, I hate kids, so if her whole point was, look, I'm not really attached to him, he's only 8 years old, I can get over this, then I will get behind that. But I find it hard to believe that nobody during the reading of this script said, boy, this is going to come off poorly for her.
You know, it's funny because I've had that note for a long time too, but I will say this last time watching it, between her seeing the fog roll in and her house is on the water and her yelling, somebody help my son, somebody help my son. I think it's just that she can't physically get there on time. That's what it felt like this time around. That's
okay. That's a logical thing, but the people I know who have kids would go through every obstacle to get to their kid, and
she just put everything into this radio station, and she can't let it fail.
I get it.
If it fails, she'll have to kill the child.
She's a modern woman. She's career oriented.
It doesn't work for me. I want her to be the lead, and I want her to act like the lead.
Yeah, I can completely understand that. And I do agree in that there are some great characters, but they're just, none of them, they all feel like pieces on a board. They feel like they're just being moved from place to place. They don't really feel like they create a beginning, middle, and end or a hero's journey or anything like that.
Yeah. The one thing I do like, and I can't remember which town it is, but right at the beginning when she's on the radio and they're showing the shot of the coastline and the vehicle driving down it, she mentions the weather. I think it's in Kingsport. It's basically a Lovecraft reference, and I was like, oh, that's nice.
There are actually a couple of different Lovecraft references in this, which I'll have to look up for you, but I know I wrote them down somewhere. Oh, Arkham Reef.
Arkham Reef.
Yeah.
Whitley Point and Arkham Reef.
That's what it was.
Yeah. It's, it's tough too, because I know, so apparently they were inspired to make this film when Deborah Hill and John Carpenter went to Stonehenge, and it happened to be a foggy day. And they got the inspiration from a movie, an old British movie called The Crawling Eye, which was about monsters hiding in clouds. So I think, I don't know, maybe there was a lot of drugs or something going on. Yeah.
Well, I guess most frustrating for me is I think there's a great movie in here.
Yes.
And maybe they just didn't have the time. Maybe they were, pushed to get this out really quickly or something like that. That opening scene is so clearly shot on a soundstage.
It is.
It's so distracting.
Yeah. And that's one of the fun facts I found is, it absolutely was. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know why in the middle of the night, her son is, she isn't a great mom, right? Her son is hanging out with some old fisherman around a campfire. Somewhere.
Maybe I should have been okay with her not caring, because she clearly doesn't care right from the start.
At all. He wakes her up and he's like, I just was playing in the sea and I was standing on some slippery rocks and grabbed this wet piece of wood. Here it is.
That was childhood when you were a kid in the 80s,
That's
man.
true.
You just disappeared for God knows how long.
He says, don't worry, I wasn't there alone. That old man who likes to hang out with just a bunch of kids was there too.
That's right. It's all good.
Yes, absolutely. No, I had that childhood too, but I love you, Mom. In case she listens
I
to this
think that sounds like a good thing. You should,
for me, it was a very good thing.
Yeah.
But I will say, it does have that element to it. It's very authentic to its time. But yeah, I definitely can't. As far as story beats, there's nothing. It's so problematic. It's so unbelievably problematic. But if you're just going to sit there and absorb something, it has so many great elements to it that I liked that, but I can see what you're saying. There is a phenomenal, top tier film in there.
Yeah, it's confounding to me because Halloween is such a strong movie, and then he follows this with The Thing.
Right.
And you're like, wow, where did he go right in those movies and completely go wrong? Also, a little nod to The Thing there. That's the vehicle that she was driving. Do you remember those? That was a Volkswagen Thing.
Oh, was it?
Oh my gosh! You know what? I think I read that at one point. That's
why do I know more about this shitty movie than you?
I'm younger than you.
Ouch.
I have time. I have time to learn.
Wow, I think we all knew that, but
But that was
In case no one knew.
Bears repeating, I guess.
well used, though. Well used.
All right, so who's going next here? Who else has a cursed object film? Because I've taken up way too much time on this.
Eric, why don't you go next? I'm still smarting from that last comment.
Okay, yes.
I'm sorry,
Get a
it's
solve.
not a bad thing. You're a distinguished gentleman.
Oh, man, you are not helping. All righty.
Is that bad?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, it is.
Oh.
That was the problem. Anyways, my headphones were not turned up enough. Going, why do I sound so weird? Oh, that's just my voice. I went with one that I'm sure was no surprise to Kelly whatsoever. Fuck, I didn't write. Oh, yeah. 2013's Oculus.
See the mirror hanging there. Face of silver, frame of black. Oculus of glass. I stare. I can feel you staring back. I hear your voice. Believe your lies. A window, portal, darkened door. Should you claim my staring eyes, my soul you hold forevermore.
Now, I'm talking about this based on the Blu-ray that I own, but it's also on Prime and Hulu. It's all over the place, easy to find. Plus, as a bonus, I will speak briefly on the Oculus short film, which I believe was in 2005.
Yeah, which I have not seen, but I've heard is incredible.
It's very good. So the film has a Rotten Tomatoes of 75 from the critics and 53 from the audience, which fits. I think the budget was a little higher than you might expect. It had a $5 million budget, but it grossed worldwide. It grossed $44 million, so it did.
Not too shabby.
Yeah. Part of the reason I think the budget was so large, is this is a production of WWE Studios, Blumhouse, Intrepid Pictures, MCA Entertainment, and Lasser Productions.
Whoa, a lot of people threw some cash in there.
Jeez, man.
Blumhouse,
yes. Damn it. Damn that Barboa.
I'm sorry. I need to look online and find out how to pronounce her name. It's going to come up, I'm
we
sure.
just
many
told
more
you how to
times.
pronounce
It's
it.
Adrian Barbeau.
Barbeau. I need to make sure, because I don't want our listeners to be angry.
Wow.
Okay. And anyways, this is directed by, as many of you know, one of my favorite current directors in horrors, Mike Flanagan. He's a writer on this, as well as Dr. Sleep, Hush, Absentia, The Upcoming Haunting of Bly House. So I guess they changed the name. He wrote this in conjunction with Jeff Howard, who he's worked with on the short film. This stars Carrie Gillian. It's her first U.S. film. She'd just gotten off of Doctor Who, and this was before she was shaved and painted blue for Guardians of the Galaxy.
All right.
Avengers, and she also is one of the main characters in the Jumanji movies.
Yeah.
And also Brenton Thwaites, who's Maleficent, Gods of Egypt, The Signal, Katie Sackhoff from Battlestar Galactica and Riddick, Rory Cochrane from Argo, 24, 50 episodes of CSI Miami, and James Lafferty from The Haunting of Hill House and One Tree Hill.
Ooh.
It's a pretty decent cast of confident actors. It's fairly, as seems to be with a lot of Curse films, it's a fairly straightforward storyline in a lot of ways. It starts off with turns out to be the younger brother getting released from asylum because he'd been captured there for killing his mother earlier on in life and his father. He's not quite ready to go home, so when his sister, played by Karen, picks him up, she takes him to a hotel room instead of back to the house. And what's going on with the house is that she has you find out she's worked to acquire this cursed mirror. Now, one thing that I find very interesting about this film, and I think why it works real well, Mike Flanagan is also the editor on it. And this is a very well-edited film going from different time periods, where it goes back to when Katie Sackhoff was the mom experiencing the problems and they were kids, and back to when they're adults. And what it does really well is it starts that off subtly, and as the movie progresses, it gets more and more aggressive in the way it moves from time frame to time frame. So I think it's just an incredibly well-edited film. And the daughter remembers what really happened, and she's trying to convince the brother that that's what happened. So what she's doing is she spent her whole life working up to be in antiquities so she could finagle a way for this mirror to be bought in a place where that had acquired it, so she could basically steal it and run experiments on it. And hey, when she's back in one of the warehouses checking out the mirror, the guy from the short film shows up and shows her around for a little bit.
Oh, that's what that's all about.
So she brings the mirror back and convinces the brother to help her. And in a scene very reminiscent of the short film, they set up the idea is that this is a cursed, what do they call it? The lesser glass, or lesser glass. And she tells the history of the glass. This is the kind of scene why I like Flanagan. This is the kind of scene that would be a boring, dumb mess by a lot of directors and a lot of editors, because it is 14 minutes, I think, of her telling the history of the glass.
Wow. And
just basically talking as she's showing images and stuff from what this glass has done in the past over the 100 or some odd years history. The pacing is amazing. There are multiple cameras set up in the room to shoot the glass. So the use of the in-camera cameras and the reel and the regular cameras is incredibly well done. It just goes back and forth in a really interesting manner. It tells you the whole story of what's going on, and it keeps it interesting. So I thought that was kind of neat. It was a little weird, though, because as she's telling the history of the story, she doesn't mention the short film guy, which I kind of thought would be one of the stories that they touched on. But yeah, it's probably for the best. And there's, of course, one of the big problems in the film becomes evident in this scene as well, where she has set up a fail switch of an anchor that will fall from the ceiling and hit the mirror. So you're kind of like, gee, how is that going to come into play later on?
Yeah.
The rest of that scene is set up very well. They also do a nice conversation on memory theory and how the brother's memory differs from hers, and is it the result of the doctors or is it the mirror? Why is he remembering it differently than she does? So it's a decently smart film too. What it does well, especially outside of the Blumhouse films or in the Blumhouse world, my biggest problem with a lot of Blumhouse movies, especially their ghost movies, is they basically start off right from the beginning being kind of creepy. And you have to build in a film. And so by the time they get to the end, it's suddenly some weird haunted action movie. Because there's so much shit going on that it's like, okay, now it's just, I'm not getting scared anymore because it's just nonstop going. This one builds tension well. It sets up the scene. It shows the different areas like the plants and the dog they bring in. Don't worry, the dog doesn't die.
Better not be lying to us.
Nope. So it sets up all the little clues of things of where you're going to see something happen later on and then delivers on them. You know, there aren't a lot of open-ended things going on in this film where, oh, well, that's too bad. I wish they'd explained what was going on there. Other parts of the creepy factor come in the way when they're younger and they're kids, the powerlessness of being a kid and how at the mercy of your parents you are, and their parents are going freaking nuts, but they don't know what to do. At one point she runs out and grabs I think a father-in-law and brings him back to the house because she's so scared. And that doesn't work, so she becomes more lost in what to do. The per most of his films, he directs children really well. The kids are very good in this film. Actually, everybody's performances are really good. And that deliberate move forward as the movie starts to pace faster and faster. There's a couple sort of jump scares, but there really aren't very many. They're more earned creepiness, and the ones that are jump, I think, are well done. But I would say by the time you get to the end, the main thing that hurts this film, as we've talked in the past, there are okay films that end so well that you're like, oh, that's a great movie. Like, it was a great last 15 minutes. This one almost goes the other way, where it's a pretty damn good movie, but the ending goes exactly where you expect it to go, and that's a little disappointing. So I think that's part of why this film was hurt so much, and it was also came out in the time where people were still doing, it's got a twist ending. It's like, no, it doesn't. It really doesn't.
It's funny that you say that, because I saw this film and I remember so many bits of it. I do not remember the ending. It must have been pretty unremarkable.
Yeah, it is. It's exactly, the anchor falls.
I remember the anchor falling.
So it's just like, all right. I was listening to the audio commentary on this one. I think you're going to like one of the things Flanagan had to say. He said, the thing about film is most people enter a film, or around his age or our age, enter a film program or want to make movies at all, comes from a great love and respect for Jaws.
Beautiful.
Initially, he was approached after the short story was such a success. He was approached to do this film, but everybody that was coming to him wanted to do it as a found footage. And he's like, I'm not doing this as a found footage film.
Right, because the short film was.
No, it's very similar in style to this one.
I thought it was him setting up the cameras and talking into the camera the entire time.
It's a form of, I guess, but it doesn't have the cliches of what makes a found footage film a problem. But yes, exactly, yeah. But he's like, nope, not for this one. I want to do a movie. But, it's a ballsy move for somebody who really hasn't done, he hadn't done any major budget films at that point.
Yeah, no. I think it's pretty cool that he stuck to his guns, actually, because there's been just such a sea of found footage films, and even though I think it would have been a cool take on it, it's still...
I think, so he had done Absentia before this. Right. Was Before I Wake before this, and then mired in all the release
I think
problems?
So, yeah.
Okay.
I believe that's what happened. He had a hard time, though, doing it as a feature because he kind of felt the short story told the whole story he wanted to say. Mm-hmm. And what really pushed him forward in the writing was that combination of timelines. He wanted to create a sense of distortion and disorientation that would kind of keep the viewer on edge as they're watching it. They did have a problem originally writing that, of doing exactly that. We're like, okay, this makes absolutely no sense. So let's take another pass at writing this. Here he comes again. Inspired by the stories of H.P. Lovecraft, Flanagan chose not to explain the full what the mirror's past is, why it does what it does, and how it does what it does. It just is. It's an alien force that if you were to try to comprehend it, completely would drive you mad. Even in the world doesn't have to have an answer. The film wrapped on October 27th, 2012, after 24 days of shooting.
Wow.
And they liked it enough that he is able to get 2 extra days out of him. The film has been remade in Bollywood.
Oh my God. Really?
Little Zahak.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Title later changed to Dabara, See Your Evil. Mike Flanagan was the executive producer.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's crazy.
The DVD has some extra scenes. One I thought they should have left in is a brother and sister kind of explaining more of what they're about and their relationship. It was just a neat, well-done scene. And they also had a coda at the end of the film showing the glass getting back into circulation. There's a neat scene that was cut had Zakhov's character with the 2 children behind him, and the 2 children are arguing at each other, but they're using the words of their parents arguing. So, and there's so much of this film where you're going, is this real? Is this an illusion? What is going on? And I think that scene would have pumped that up even more. It's a neat scene. It's not a tragedy that was cut, but it's a neat scene. So that's the feature.
Ooh.
And now the short film. The short film came out in 2005. I didn't find any real ratings for it. It's a budget of $1,500, according to Flanagan on the commentary. He mentioned that. But it won a dozen or more Best Film or Best Actor awards from film festivals, including the Tabloid Witch Awards.
Oh.
We won one of those for.
Oh, cool! I was like, that's something I haven't heard of.
Yeah, that doesn't mean anything to me. Director Flanagan, writer Mike and Jeff, stars Scott Graham, who was also in Absentia. I hadn't watched this in a long time, so since I'd watched it last, I've probably seen God knows how many thousands of short films. So I'm going, I wonder if this is still going to hold up for me. God damn, it does.
Really?
It is still so good, even though it breaks what I almost consider a cardinal rule of short films. It's almost half an hour long.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
But if it's good.
Yeah, exactly. And it's smart filmmaking because it's all one room. It's largely one actor. There's a few others that show up and a few things, but nothing more than like extras, featured extras level. The mirror is very similar, though it's obviously much smaller, which kind of feels a little more practical. The one in the movie is uncomfortably large.
Right.
The one actor, though, is quite good. I think they set it up with alarms, so there's the ability to have weird scares that are kind of jump scares, but not really, because you know they're coming at some point. The sound is used well, almost to the point of being annoying, which I think works for what they're doing with the film. It is largely reproduced. The setup is completely reproduced in the film, but with much, much newer and much more expensive gear. Like he's got little old computers in there. There's a plug-in-the-wall phone kind of thing. Old alarms while you go to the new one, and he's got Mac computers and nice security system cameras all through the house. But they use a plant the same way in the short that they do in the film. And they have a dog that they use similarly. Dog doesn't die per se, but he does disappear. So, and the breakdown of the history of the mirror is fairly similar. It's a lot more graphic and longer in the feature. The music in the short is amazing. But the part that brings it together is Flanagan's directing and Scott Graham's acting. Just make it work. And again, he edited. The pacing is incredibly good. I remember watching it again, looking down at the time. Oh, wow. Holy shit, this thing's half over already. All right. So those are my cursed item films.
So is that short still available to watch on YouTube?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. I wasn't sure if they would have taken it down since they added it as like an extra on the DVD.
It became very hard for a while when the DVD and Blu-ray first came out because it was a featured extra.
Gotcha.
But now it's fairly readily available on YouTube.
They got it back out there.
I've seen that feature twice now, and I can barely remember any of it. It does absolutely nothing for me. So I knew that you would probably go for this, but I thought you would stick with the short film, which I do remember everything of.
Yeah, the short film's a hell of an achievement, man. I think it's...
Yeah. All right, then. My cursed object is a book.
Of course.
Not a candle, not a doorknob, but a book? My God.
Would you like to continue?
No, I'm just really excited to hear what you chose.
I chose a movie from 1989 called I, Madman.
I stood in the shadow of an alley, watching and waiting for that special one. Soft as cloud and brilliant as sun, a flaming crimson torch of feathers, ready and ripe for easy picking.
It's this weird book that I picked up where I work. Somehow this character got out. One minute I was reading about him, and the next minute he was standing right next to me. I know, it sounds crazy.
Damn right it sounds crazy.
If you don't
Now, she's about to discover the shocking truth.
You published this book as nonfiction.
Malcolm insisted, claimed they were confessions. The guy was a lunatic, claims the characters were talking back to him, refusing to do what he says. The monster from the first book, the jackal boy, was hunting him down.
Now he's going to go around and take things from other people so he can, graft them onto his own face.
Now what we have to do is we have to figure out when this maniac is going to strike next.
There's a murder. It's about to happen. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't make it stop. Richard, I'm so scared.
That's it. Go.
Is it fact, fiction, or a nightmare? Escape from between the pages of a hardcover.
Or, as it was known in Australia, hardcover.
Sure. Oh, 'cause book.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
Could find no budget information on it, although it looks gorgeous, which makes the box office really disappointing. $151,000.
No.
Just
Poor little
a film festival thing or something?
I don't know. That seems too high to be film festival stuff. I think I don't know, maybe it played for a week or 2 weeks or something like that.
In one country.
Right. Rotten Tomatoes, the critics have it at 60%. The audience has it at 39%.
Ouch.
Well, I can kind of see it because this is an unusual film and in a couple of ways maybe unsatisfying if you're going in for standard horror fare, which it is not. It was directed by Tibor Takacs, who directed The Gate. And also,
nice.
My Babysitter is a Vampire. And dozens of TV movies. It was written by David Chaskin, who wrote The Curse, which I spoke about on our Lovecraft film, and Nightmare on Elm Street 2. And it stars Jenny Wright, who was also in The Wildlife.
I like that you looked at me for that. I'm sorry, I didn't see it, okay?
She was also in Near Dark. But I love it because this stars her. She is absolutely the lead of this film.
Nice.
She was also in The Lawnmower Man, which I did not choose for my Lovecraft or my Stephen King movie.
Yeah, no.
And it stars Clayton Rohner, who was in at least one episode of every single TV series you've ever heard of. I mean, this guy's got like 400 credits, and it's all 80s television. And he's just a very handsome-looking dude.
Handsome dude, one.
Not a particularly good actor, unfortunately.
Aww.
So Jenny Wright plays Virginia, who works in a bookstore and loves horror novels. She is definitely one of the tribe. We totally glom onto her from like moment one. She's reading a horror book, and she's like, her eyes are wide, and she's turning the pages frantically and everything, and you realize, oh, this chick loves to be scared. So who didn't love that stuff? She reads this one book and then finds out that this particular author, has written one other book, and she works at a bookstore, so she decides to start, and it's a used bookstore. This is 1989, so this is when bookstores existed, and it wasn't just Barnes & Noble. And so she starts doing a search for this book, and it's called I, Madman. But there is like no information available at all. It's one of those kind of stories, Eric, that you and I both love. It's like, this book. And she's even talking to the other gal who works there, saying, I need you to do some research on this. And, if you could just help me find this. And the gal's like, okay, whatever. Virginia comes home from work one day, and there's a package on her doorstep.
Uh-oh.
And she opens it up, and it is a tattered copy of I, Madman, and she's super excited.
What a lovely gift.
Yes, exactly. That's what she thinks.
Somebody knew exactly what she wanted, and they went out of their way to give it to her. I think that's great. End of movie.
Well, she assumes it is her friend at the bookstore who doesn't help things when she vaguely answers Virginia when she says, "Did you send that book to me?" And instead of saying it wasn't me, she says, "Well, it was the book you were looking for, right?"
Oh no!
So
Who says that?
nobody. So she just thinks, oh, okay, she found this book for me, and she starts reading it. It is a creepy book.
Do we get to go into the book?
Yes, because as she reads the scenes, she is suddenly in the book. And so what's happening is happening to her. She's all dressed up in a different outfit and everything, and it's set in the 50s. And
is it like a fantasy version? Or
yeah, it's I mean, it's in her head. You know, she's
got it. She hasn't been sucked into the
No.
No Jumanji book.
No, she just becomes the protagonist in her own mind. It's actually really stylized and very clever. The lighting in this movie is so gorgeous, and it really shines in these scenes and kind of sets it apart from the realism of the other scenes. And it looks like it's out of The Birds or something like that in Technicolor, and nice. You can almost see the grain in the film and all this stuff. It's really, really cool. So the story in the book is about a man who has been spurned by a woman because she finds him ugly. And so to fix this, he cuts off his face and decides to start with a blank slate.
Oh!
So he starts killing women and cutting off various parts of them to make a new face for himself.
For himself?
What?
He doesn't...
Killing
judgy
women?
much? Wow.
I mean...
Holy cow. I would have expected some of this shit from Eric, but not from you. Wow.
I'm just saying, if you're doing it for another person, you should make sure
Eric,
that you're...
cut all this out before we get canceled.
I'm sorry.
No, is it a Buffalo Bill kind of thing, or is?
Yeah, he's making a new face for himself out of women's parts.
But in the
Probably
meantime,
because
he's got nothing. Like he's just got like red goo.
Yes, it's pretty gruesome stuff. It's pretty gruesome stuff.
Oh, that's gross.
Yeah. But as she continues to read the story, she then starts reading the news, and like the murder she just read in the story happened last night in the real world as well. And she's like, what is going on here? And so enter Clayton Romer, her boyfriend, who just happens to be a police detective.
Convenient.
Yeah, super convenient.
Well, unless you're trying to tell him that you think that the murders he's investigating are because she read about them in a book that doesn't really exist.
So good.
He's having a hard time believing her, as you may imagine. Especially because she's such a horror hound. He's just like, when we first see him and her together, she's scared when he shows up at her place, and he realizes, he looks down at this copy of the book and he's like, this is why you're scared. You're always reading these trashy novels.
Those women and their trashy horror films.
He actually comes off as kind of a chump. Because it's Jenny Wright, and she's fucking gorgeous. She can do whatever she wants, right?
Just go along with it, bro.
Right. So this leads us to her having to, of course, take care of this herself. The police are going to be no help because every time they do kind of pay attention to her, it doesn't turn out the way that it was supposed to. She knows that this killer is going to strike in a museum because she just read it, and so the police stake out the museum, and nothing. Except on the other side of town, at the other museum they weren't staking out, the murder occurred. How many museums does this fucking town need?
Yeah, just stake a few police at A and a few at B. Done and done.
Anyhow, so she's going to have to battle the killer alone, and the third act gets fucking crazy. Now, a lot of people don't like this third act, and it's because it gets weird. There's a lot of weird symbolism going on, and then there's a very, very bizarre stop-motion demon that shows up.
Excellent.
Yes.
And pages exploding out of a building, and all, really cool visuals. There's a book avalanche in the bookstore. Where she's
cool.
she's running away up these stairs that have been piled with books while all the books suddenly fall, and she's like sliding down and everything. It's really, really cool visuals, but it absolutely makes zero sense. That's probably why the audience rating is so low. This movie doesn't really make sense. It's kind of got a dream logic feel to it. And if I step away from it, let me just put it out there right now. I love this movie. I fucking think it's brilliant. But when I step away from it, I can also go, this makes no sense. And she's the lead, and she's really smart and competent and independent until the third act, when she starts acting a little differently, kind of mousy and not like she was, and to the point where you can only assume that she is being directed to act this way, because she was not this way in the other parts of the film.
Sucks.
So it's kind of like, why now? Regardless of all of that, this is a really fun movie. It's a really neat looking movie. It's just gorgeous. That's also one of the weird things. It feels like a B movie, but it looks like a movie for sure. That's why I was searching everywhere to find some kind of budget on this, and like, it had to be a couple million at least in 1989, and everything, all the money is on the screen, I'm sure, and for it to only $161,000. That's
where is it available now?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is it impossible to find?
You know what? No. Shout Factory has a lovely DVD of it.
Of course.
Excellent.
I'm gonna go there right now.
What's interesting is Scream Factory had an amazing version of it. That's sold out. And the only difference when I looked at everything is a cover. The cover is different on the Scream Factory version.
Oh, interesting.
But everything else is in there, the director commentary, writer commentary, all that stuff. It's the sets are. Well,
it doesn't look like it's currently available.
Oh no!
You got the last copy.
It's $44.
I don't even have the copy. I have it. I have a bare bones DVD.
Oh no!
$44 on.
Oh, bummer. Well, $44 is not too shabby for this. I mean, it's probably a $29 bit anyway. Jenny Wright is great. The sets are beautiful. It's a really neat original idea. And guess what? In my notes, Shout Factory sold out edition.
Oh, there you go.
Oh.
With director's commentary and interviews and a making of. So, I don't know.
But
I know people
if
like.
you really want it, you can still get it.
Yeah. And in fact, about a year ago, Danny Williford and I were chatting back and forth, and I had recommended this film to him, and he picked it up, and I know that he ended up really liking it. So, don't just take my advice, take Danny's.
Also, it would be worth looking, I think, for there's on the Shout Factory website, I believe there's actually a way to stream a lot of their content.
Yeah, they have a streaming
channel.
channel.
Well, they have a streaming channel. I wonder if that'd be something that's available there.
It might be.
It tends to be not a lot of titles, at least the times I've looked at.
Oh, I thought there was a lot. Yeah, I thought there were thousands on there the last time I looked through there. A lot of TV shows.
Yeah, a lot of old
Yes.
TV stuff you don't really want to watch. But
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, Madman. Really cool, really fun. Cursed book.
Sounds awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Wow,
Okay.
This is a good week. There's been some really good picks. Seems like the common thread here is good lighting. Cursed object, good lighting.
There you go.
Hey, I got to say, if there was a winner of these three films, it's probably mine.
What?
And you guys wouldn't even be able to know because you can't watch it now. So you're just going to take my word for
You're
it.
just going to claim it every week.
Yes. That is what he will do.
That's what he's going to do. I was hoping that, we were all going to have a fighting chance here.
Nobody likes a sore loser, Vanessa.
No. I'm not going to start picking films that I think will beat your film. I'm going to pick the films that I think are interesting or I want to complain about for a nice 20-minute period.
There you go.
In front of people.
Well, all right. Since it is my pick for the subgenre, and since this is sold out on Shout Factory, I'm going to pick, because we did a couple weeks back, the Scream Factory catalog. I want to pick something from Shout Factory this time.
Whoa.
Nice. So that will expand the style film
let's
we
keep
talk
it
about.
kind of genre. So there are plenty of comedies on Shout Factory. I don't think that's exactly what we want to be talking about on our podcast.
What about, I know there's a ton of crime films, action-y.
Yeah, I think that...
we just had Cobra.
Yeah.
I know.
Last week.
I guess that's true. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I think that, and that's a genre. And I suppose, dramedy is a genre too. It's just not one I want you guys talking about.
Sure. Well, I have a few ideas.
Ooh, cool.
So, yeah, they need to endorse us. They need to start sending us like a box of stuff.
You go.
Especially after both of your shitty experiences with them and not getting the DVDs right forever.
I know. That scratched copy of, I think it was The Fog.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, the scratched metal. And then they sent me the new. Anyway, it was fine. We got it sorted. But
I had the same thing. Well, not the same thing, but I had a weird thing too where I got the Omen box set with 2 copies of the Omen 2 and no copies of the original.
I love that so much.
So I contacted them.
Doubled
the okay one. But so I contacted them, like, oh, sorry. And they sent me a copy of the remake. So I had 2 copies of 2 and 2 copies of the remake. But hey, this last week I got the new one. They're all set. They're solid.
Fantastic.
And now guess who has Blu-ray copies of the remake and Damien Omen 2?
Ooh.
Who's got 2 thumbs and is waving them ridiculously at his own face?
That guy.
Yep, me.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, that's the show. Thank you so much to everybody, all the stalwarts who are always commenting, liking, sharing, and everything. We have 0 advertising budget, so the only way we get out to other people is when you guys are sharing the stuff. We really appreciate it.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for listening.
We finally had a 5-star, so it's open for another one.
We're ready.
Get out there.
He's
There's
ready.
A 5-star rating.
I'm not going to do it.
I rated the podcast, but I could only give it 3 stars. It's like, you know what? It needs work.
I get it. I got your notes, okay? I'm trying to shape it.
All right. I love you guys, and I love everybody who's listening. And everybody, I hope, is keeping safe out there, social distancing, doing whatever your state requires you to do. And we will be back in 1 week with Shout Factory.
Sweet.
Our show is recorded somewhere high above Naval Station Everett at the nexus of all realities and is engineered and produced by Eric Margaret. Our theme music is Strange Aeons Part 1 by the band Nightshade and is used with permission. Find Strange Aeons Radio on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and wherever